Yeah, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Jelly beans big.
Oh, look, I'm gonna leather you across my leg in a minute. Right. Okay. We are actually live online now. Pete, now you can talk. It's 10 minutes past 6. We have officially started. Now you can officially say something, Pete. Right. So talk.
Well, I was saying the first spinning wheel was the little spinning thing that you showed us the other week, where you were acting up. Well, I showed you the hat, which was knitted by yarn, which was spun with the same machine that you were showing us.
Yeah, that's
Very
right.
similar machine.
That's right. Just something simple but effective.
Yes.
Drawing down the wool. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Do you know what? We did go into detail last week. And doing this on a Tuesday is more of what I did last night. Actually, when we did prehistory last night, we just had a long discussion about things last night, and it was quite refreshing because it did go on until 10 past 10. But and that side of discussion with what we do on a Wednesday is really important, and it's something that it's something that's very useful each week. So I'm just posting this up here, so just in case, and if Neil actually does come on, right, I won't be hit by his sort of marvelousness, right? I got to keep very calm. Unlike last night where there were several people saying, "Hello, Neil."
Probably came on from my poetry last night.
Oh.
You know what, right? Can I just comment and just in front of everyone, Pete, right? It's always about you.
Well,
it is. Pete's our senior member, aren't you, Pete?
Oh God.
just the oldest.
Oh, that's
the oldest, they're the senior.
Is he? No, hang on. You've been coming. Hang on, Bill. You've been coming longer than Pete.
Have I?
Yeah.
I'm about 10 years. I thought Pete was older than that.
No, Pete.
I've been with Carl longer than that.
Oh, so I've suffered the longest then, have I?
No, hang on a minute. We got to get this.
Yeah, it's got to be Bill.
Oh, it's got to be Bill. It's not Roger.
Thanks for that.
No.
Pete lost all his hair.
Well, I had black hair when I joined, Carl, before I joined.
Yeah, I think you actually did, actually. So last week we did actually get into this moment where we were talking about the wheel being an extension of the line, because when you think of the wheel, if you start one end of the circumference, you come back to it, and it's just a continuous sort of repeating mechanism. So we did discuss in many ways last week what wheels could be used for, and where the first wheels came from in the context of civilization. Now I'm going to try it. I struggled the past hour trying to work out how to continue last week, so we know what so we know where we're going. So the first thing I'm going to say is that to understand the evidence of the wheel, you don't need the wheel as evidence to say that wheels were used. Now, when we use the word used, don't immediately think that I'm referring to the word used as meaning traction. Somebody's got me, and we got some feedback there. So Roger, mute your mic. Last week we did mention in China, we've got evidence of wheel tracks dating back 4,200 years. And these tracks themselves indicate that wheels were being used. but we're not going to use the word that they were used for transport at this stage and define what transport means. So we have evidence in China again. So if we go back 4,200 years ago, that's the evidence of wheel tracks. Then we've got evidence of spoked wheels, actual spoked wheels in the archaeology dating back 4,000 years ago. So not long after those wheel track evidence comes to us, we've actually got wheel hubs, wheel spokes in the archaeological record in China. So do we move on and suddenly say there is the evidence that this is a form of transport? And I'm going to be very sort of maybe not, because we've got to keep our minds very open. We did mention last week this big timber, this big sort of circular piece of timber, which was 1 meter in diameter. And the archaeological evidence was from Must Farm. And Must Farm itself, if we go to my images today, and if we want to do a little bit of a recap, so I've got I'm just gonna hang on 1 second, still learning this technology. Hang on, so we've got that there, right? So if we type into the box here, if we type in Must Farm, hang on a minute, and we go and we share this. I don't think we gave this as much time as we should have last week. But if we type in wheel, there we go, and we put the images up. By the way, I wasn't actually going to show this image today, but we are anyway. And if we share this on the screen, moving on, let's get this working. Share. And we got a screen. Start now. Go back. And we go back. There it is. Now this amazing wheel. Amazing wheel. We use this as a backdrop. Now we're repeating what we said last week, but to try and move on this week, we need to sort of do some of the recapping. So evidence of what we do believe is a wheel, because that's hub in the middle. This dates to approximately 3,000 years ago. This was found at Must Farm in Peterborough, and this is 1 meter in diameter. It's not a huge wheel, but it's 1 meter in diameter. And this is by far the best and most representative of evidence of a wheel of any form, and the earliest form of a wheel being found in Great Britain dating back 3,000 years ago. This is intact.
Can I make a comment?
Go on.
To me, that doesn't look like a wheel. It looks like a shield. Because if you look at the thickness, this gap here on the left-hand side, it seems to be very, very thin, far too thin to be a wheel.
Yep.
Now,
Pete.
The centre bit could be a boss or a shield.
Now, Pete, that's an interesting thing that you're saying. It's a very interesting thing that you're saying. It was believed at the time. Now I haven't got the measure of thickness here, right? But what we could do that little bit of research now. So if we can, if we type, if we type in thick, that's what we need. Now this is what we need to be doing. We need to be looking at this, right? Hang on, spelled that wrong. So if we type in thickness, now that's a question I was not. Yeah, I didn't. Why does this keep coming up wrong? This was not a question that I thought I was going to come up with. So thickness. So if we go that there, and we go. Right. All right. All. Right. Here we go. 4 centimeters thick. So I'm going to get a ruler.
Oh, blimey. That's about, what's a centimetre? That's about 2
an
inches.
inch and a half.
Yeah, inch and a half. It could be a wheel, I suppose.
Yeah.
Very
Now,
thin-
now,
very
now,
thin wheel.
I've looked at that, and it's sort of right. If we read the information on here, just that little bit is interesting. It has decayed slightly, losing some of its thickness. It was probably somewhere. So if we look at the lower end of 3 centimeters, which is there, that's the thickness of a thin plank.
It'd be very fragile.
Yeah, that's 4 centimeters is a bit more structurally sound. Do you know what? What I'm going to do, right? What I'm going to do, I'm going to get some wood now. Hang on. Now, I've been let loose with a chainsaw, right?
Oh dear.
And am I showing on the screen? Can you have a quick look at these? You seeing these?
No, we can still see your farm wheel thickness thing.
Right. Okay. If we go off there, and I'm just going to show you these now. Right. So if we stop that, right. So I've actually we've got the chainsaw now. Yeah. And this itself, I'm going to measure the thickness of this. So if we now that is 2 centimeters thickness, right?
Yep.
That's not going to take weight.
No,
No, it could be a wheel, but you couldn't put a lot of weight on it.
no.
Right. This one here is 4 centimeters. Could you put weight on that?
Yeah, you could put a load on it, but it wouldn't be such for that. It would be, but not for the 4 mil thick. It would take a load, yes.
Okay.
Depends how it was constructed. That's constructed of bits.
So it says there is also a relatively large borehole that has unfortunately gone through the upper portion of the wheel at some point before it was discovered. So if we go back to the original image, and we go there, and we go to the image. Anyway, back to the point. You guys, that I like it that you wanted to expand out the box. I like that. I like what you did then. But it was believed that this was actually the top of a barrel.
Yeah, more likely.
So, but what is that thing in the middle? It does look like it looks like a hub. Yeah. So if we go back to if we just hold this in the background a minute.
It's not in the middle.
Let's Pete. Let's have a look.
Sorry.
Sorry, let's have a look a little bit down on this a minute.
Yeah,
Let's
certainly
just,
not. Doesn't look like it's in the middle.
now that's more. Does that look centered? It doesn't, does it?
It
Well,
looks
it's not
more
bad.
central now.
Yeah, that's fairly central, isn't it?
Yeah.
But why hasn't the commentary of the team there suggested it could be something else, not just a wheel?
Yeah.
If we can
No,
do it,
I don't think that could be a
why can't they do
load-bearing
it?
wheel of any sort.
Yeah.
No. This is the point. This is the point. Now I'm liking this today. It's a bit slow today, but I'm liking this. So the wheel hub is also present. Now, as an archaeologist, right, I'm looking at this image and saying that actually looks like a post, and it's just gone through the wheel, right?
Again,
Now
that could be the case. Yeah.
the big question is I want to know what the hub's made of, because it's not going to be made of iron, because this was found in a Bronze Age, right? So then the question is wheel. If we type in the word hub, what is the hub made of? Now I'm presuming there is wood. Now, I don't know the answer to this question, so we'll see if we got the answer.
Normally it would be wood and a wooden shaft.
Yeah. Wooden wheels containing its hub. It's not giving us when I don't want to spend too long on this specific question, but what I want to concentrate really on is the idea that you guys are actually saying that why does it have to be a wheel? And that is the point. That is the issue that I'm making, right? Because it's circular, there are other uses that this could have. Agreed? Good. They believe that this is a wheel because a horse's spine was found nearby, suggests the wheel may have been part of a horse-drawn cart. It said suggests. The wheel was found at a settlement, our site known as Must Farm, suggesting that this wheel would have needed traction on dry land. Or is that too much assumption? Now, what I would like to do now, I want us to bring back those images that we did last week. Yeah, so I'm gonna get to those images. So if we come back off that a minute and we just sort of stop that sharing, we're going to come back to those images that we had last week. So we're going to do that. It's going to get these images up now. And this next thing is something that we touched upon last week. Again, we touched upon this hub, we touched upon this wheel last week, but we didn't actually go into much detail. And now we have gone into detail, which is really, really useful. So I've got this ready now. My images will come up. And if we look and we just refresh ourselves with some of the images, and then we'll come back to the image that I want to show you. So here we go. And I'm just going to get this on. Share. And nope, I don't want to share the camera. Stop. Share. And screen. Start now. I'm going to go to it. Right, we're going to go there. And we did have that minute. Actually, the ones on these are really useful. So we looked at this last week, and one of the things that is actually a chunky wheel. You can't deny that. An early wheel made of a solid piece of wood. Now that is chunky, right? You can think of that as being used in some kind of early industrial process involving milling. You could think of that as some kind of pounding instrument to make things go into dust, that type of thing. You could think of rollers, all sorts of different things. But if we sort of move on and go through, we've already done this, so we don't want to repeat too much. We mentioned this. This is from Ljubljana. We did mention this last week. And this from Ljubljana dates back to 5,000 years ago. And we looked at this and we went into a nice bit of detail. And then what we then went on to, we sort of moved on and we looked onto other representations. This is a representation from the Sumerian world. So we got representations of carts and wagons, right? This dates back to 4,500 years ago. And we mentioned sort of solid wheels on a heavy temple car, a heavy sort of thing that which would have been a great difficulty to move on. Look at the size of those wheels compared to the bike. Again, this is where I wanted us to go. Now, this is very odd. This is very, very odd. Now, when we opened last week, one of the things that I said was that we don't have much evidence of the wheel being used in the Americas. However, this itself is a figurine from we would call it the New World, obviously the Americas, Mesoamerica, Central America. This itself is a wheeled toy. And this wheeled toy dates from before Christopher Columbus got there in 1492. So this itself existed, indicating movement using wheels. Now, this is a children's toy. Now, don't mind me, but if somebody's designing this, are they designing the concept of something that already is in use? Or are we talking about Leonardo da Vinci scenario where things are invented, but they're not really used for the purpose that they're you know, Leonardo da Vinci come up with the idea of the submarine, hot air balloon, aircraft, all sorts of things, but most of those things weren't put into practice. So before I read this now, lots of archaeologists are suggesting that just because you've got representations doesn't mean to say that these were ever put into practice, or is that a nonsense concept? Now, what we are talking about, it'd be a bit like finding models of ancient pyramids and then saying that ancient pyramids never happened, but they did. So reading this, although large-scale use of wheels did not occur in the Americas, now that's the word large-scale use. I like that word large-scale. Although large-scale use, what does that mean? Numerous small-wheeled artifacts, such as this one, have been found on Central American sites associated with previous civilizations which were prior to the Mayan, like the Olmecs, Zapotecs, and those types of civilizations, right? And if we think about the Olmec civilization, you get these great carved cylindrical balls with huge stone circular thingamajigs, right? Which are about 2 or 3 meters in diameter, and you're thinking, well, it's a ball. Why? Yeah, leave it. This nice little artifact dates back to 1,500 years ago. No, it doesn't. It dates back to 3,500 years ago, right? This dates back from well before Christopher Columbus. 3,500 years ago. This is when this dates back to. Now, if we want to get into the concept of this, and we're going a lot deeper than I thought we were, some argue that the primary some argue, if we think about this in our mind, some argue that the primary obstacle to large-scale development of the wheel, again, large-scale developments, that means that there was development. The main obstacle to large-scale development of the wheel in the Americas was the absence of domesticated large animals that could be used to pull wheeled carriages. Excuse me, but we didn't have elephants in Britain, but we still used wheeled transport, right? They don't have so when you say large-scale animals to pull the wagons and carts, they do have access to llamas, and they do have access to alpacas, and you could start to think, well, there were bisons, yeah, so there were bisons out there, so that's their equivalent of our Western cattle, our oxen. And why can't you domesticate a bison to pull a wagon of some description? And I'm pretty sure, tell me I'm wrong or not, you can tell me I'm wrong. I've probably watched as much Western films as you, Bill, right? From the 1950s and 60s, right? Did you ever see bisons pulling carts? Am I thinking you? Am I sniffing newsprint? But did I see bisons pulling carts in some of those films from the 50s and 60s?
I've never seen anything like that.
They had horses.
Horses to pull things. Never seen any bison. Could you tame them? Could you harness them properly?
Yeah, I think you could probably, if you can harness an oxen, which is probably the same scale as a bison.
You probably could. If you could tame a bison, yes, that's the key thing. Could you tame a bison for domestic use?
Yeah, I to be honest with you, right, the answer is yes, because I know I can be a bit silly, and other people can be a bit silly, but I've got my wonderful baldric here, right? And he actually if there's people that he doesn't like, he goes and stands near them, and he draws an alarm, right? That's domestication. Can't say it's not domestication. That is domestication. That's a turkey, right? So turkeys' brains are much smaller than the huge brain of the American bison. So anyway, we're going to leave that there, right? And turkeys are actually from the same place as well, so that's a link. So leave that there. Leave all that there. We've gone as far as I want to do with that. So even though there might be difficulties to domesticating some of the bigger beasts in North America, it's possible. We do know, and this is the age-old debate. We do know that there were several horse species that existed in North America until 12,000 years ago. We're saying that they ultimately became extinct. There's also the theory that the horse may have originally started off in North America, ended up going across the Bering Straits, then they become domesticated, and then the existing stock in North America become extinct. We don't know that. But there is evidence to say that the horse did exist in America at least 12,000 years ago, but then the evidence starts to disappear. So I'm not, in my notes here, is obsessed with what can draw something with wheels, right? In my experience, you can use people to draw a cart with wheels, right? That you can't ignore that people can be used to draw a cart. Now, we actually do see that in some Eastern countries, don't we? The idea of the rickshaw. So the rickshaw is drawn by an individual, isn't it? So why can't you use people to draw these things? So what they are saying in effect is, because we don't have the large horses in the West and elephants in India, that means that wheeled transport did not exist. But we do have evidence of models of wheeled transport. And don't come back at me and say, well, have we found much evidence of wheels in North America? And the answer is no, other than the models. But then I can come back at you and say, actually, do we have any wheels from the Roman period surviving? And the answer is not many. So does that mean that the Romans didn't use wheels? So that's a really important point. When we looked at the evidence in China, this is why we did the evidence in China. We got evidence in China over 4,200 years ago. There's tracks, but there's no evidence of the wheels that made those tracks. But it's still evidence of wheels being used for, going back to Must Farm, folks. You said, well, was this actually a wheel? And this is very important, because wheels need not be used wheels can be used to assist an adze and a shaft as it's moving across the surface, whilst the wheels turn. You pull the shaft and the adze is in the ground. Now that's actually, if you do look at some plow instruments today, wheels are actually used in regards to the adze, in regards to the plow, if you have a look in some circumstances. So what I'm trying to say is the wheel need not just be an idea for transport, can be used for a wider array of other things. And then when we did actually think of this today, one of you said it looks like a shield boss. So where did the concept of a shield boss come from? It comes from the concept of a wheel. So you know that it's all coming back to the idea of the wheel again. So I'm not going to dismiss the idea of wheel transport being used in the Americas, because everything in my mind tells me possible, on a much bigger scale than my notes indicate. Mesoamericans, now this is interesting. Mesoamericans, from what we understand, never developed the wheelbarrow. But when did we develop the wheelbarrow in the West? They did not develop the potter's wheel. Right. Okay. But they still produced very fine pottery. Now, that's another point. If you look at some North American pottery, right, it is so well made, you would be excused for saying it was made on a potter's wheel, right? So if you can make pottery without a potter's wheel, why do you need a potter's wheel? You see? You don't need things.
According to need.
Yeah, it's all about need. And Pete, can I just say one thing before you say any more? What's the point in repairing something when it's not broke? Go for it, Pete.
Well, the evolution of the wheel, but evolved obviously according to need. When the need came that it was necessary to move large quantities of material, then they needed something to move it on. And first of all, we had the log, you had the cross section of a tree, and then you had these round bits that it would roll along. So the wheel, I believe, would evolve according to the need to move stuff.
Right. Can we just take that a minute, Pete? If you had somebody who was massively into the Incas now, right? They would be now chaffing at the bit with what you just said, because the Incas were able to move huge hewn big chunks of rock, which were 4 or 5 tons in weight, right? Were they? This is the point, Pete. Were they able to move them without the use of the wheel? And if they were able to move them without the use of the wheel, then they didn't need the wheel in the first place. You see the concept?
Rollers.
Rollers. So that is in essence a wheel. So
Yes.
As we know, we could use kelp or what have you. So when we think of this, maybe the concept of the wheel wasn't necessarily what was deeply required in the context of North American or South American, Central American civilization. They didn't need a wheel for the potter's wheel, right? They start again. They didn't need a wheel to make pottery. That's one point. Were they able to move boulders without the use of the actual development of the wheel, even if they're using oh God, I'm at a senior moment. Even if they use, Pete, what was that word you used just a second ago?
Well, the evolution of the wheel to need.
Hang on. What did you say to move a boulder?
Oh, to be rollers.
Why can't I remember the word rollers? I'm having a senior moment. This is really bad. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, Pete, that's the one. You could have got me out of the hole then. You made me feel so bad then. Rollers. If they were able to move these things with rollers, right? Then was there a need, back to the word need, to develop the wheel anyway? Except we know that they had developed the concept of the wheel by these types of objects, the one you can see in front of you. So we're really in trouble now trying to understand what's going on. These numbers of toys, very similar to those found and used by children today across the world. So should we use the word practical use? But then again, keeping a child entertained is a practical use. Now, this is what we were talking about last week. The closest the Maya came to a utilitarian wheel, a useful wheel, a wheel that could be used for a number of uses, was the spindle wheel that we've already mentioned, which we mentioned last week, the spindle wheel. Some scholars believe that these toys were originally made from spindle wheels and spindle sticks as wheels, and you're thinking, well, yeah, that makes sense. So this is this is a bit nuts, right? I'm just gonna see if we can get this spindle wheel a minute.
You start with that, and then you think we can have something bigger to make wool a lot faster, make cord a lot faster, so we can obviously knit or weave so much more.
Can we just go, Pete? That's good. Can we just go off this Actually, we're gonna keep going down this rabbit hole, right? Because there's something really interesting. If you haven't spotted it all already, folks, there's something in this rabbit hole, right? Now, it's presumed, is it not, that the wheel itself was developed and other things. So you've got two wheels. You've got a sachet. Oh God, you've got the wheel itself. You've got the shaft. You've got the mechanisms that would mean that you've got a cart and you've got a yoke and everything's connected together, and there's this little cart going across the landscape. And then you think, right, what we need, what that looks really good, and the concept of that could develop into a spindle wheel, right? Which goes around, and this is how you spin your wool, a simple spindle wool, right? So in the notes here, it's basically mentioned that toy that we've just been looking at for quite some moments, that toy may have been inspired from the spindle wool. So it's just a simple matter of just putting two circular discs on what you could call a shaft, right? And that itself would then develop into the toy. Now, that's a really interesting concept. And then the idea of the toy developing into an idea for a mode of transport. Can you see where we're going there? So what we're seeing is that there's the development of technology having different routes. Okay, so it goes back to that. It goes back to what we've looked at before. And what we've looked at before is what came first. Yeast itself fermenting from say emmer, a ground emmer. Ground emmer goes into water. A kind of yeast is created, and people taste that and they think, oh, that's nice. We could make that into some kind of beverage, i.e., and that leads into alcohol.
Well, it reacts with the sugar to form carbon dioxide.
Yes, because they're a natural sugars. That's right. So, what came? The point is, what came first? You know, the chicken or the egg. What came first, beer or bread? Yeah.
Well, they had unleavened bread, didn't they?
Yes.
Bread without yeast.
Yeah. But then actually yeast is natural occurring as well, yeah. Right? So bacterially occurring. So don't get too stuck on that. The point I'm making here is things develop from different routes, right? So did the spindle wheel, the concept of the spindle wheel develop into the concept of a cart? Did a children's toy develop into the concept of the spindle wheel?
No.
Right now, this is something that we need to look at in archaeology, because what we always assume when we look at human evolution, we somehow think that we came down from the tree, we started walking upright, and we started using tools, or did we start using tools before we started walking upright? Did we start making fires before we started making tools, right? So what I'm saying is when you look at anything, there are different routes to that development. There's never one route to the development of anything. There's different ways. You can't. Nothing in archaeology is black and white. So if somebody turns around and says, "Oh, we came out of trees 4 million years ago, and then we started finding berries, and then we took a stone and we smashed those berries, and then there was a little dusty stuff inside, and then we did something with that. Oh, we decided to make something with it, little patties of some kind, and we made a fire." There's so many different ways things can develop. This is what we're talking about, right? So if we go back to that image, we're going to go back to that image that we just had, and just back again, and we're going to share this, and we're going to go back to that screen. Start now. Stop looking out the window, Stephen. You're not in a classroom now. We go back to these again. Go back to that image that we just had. There it is again. There it is. Think of that. Just keep that in your mind's eye. Now, what we do have, what is more important, the development of the wheel or water? Now, when we think about Nubian civilization, i.e., Egypt, not Nabatean, Nubian civilization over 2,400 years ago, we do know that the Nubians used wheels for spinning pottery and as water wheels. Yeah, so that's one thing we haven't discussed, water wheels. The idea of the water wheel. Now, that's something else, the development of the water wheel, where you can move water to a higher level from down here, and as it turns, it scoops water up and it goes to a higher level, and then it keeps going and it keeps going and keeps going. Now, that's a concept that may have been developed in ancient Egypt a lot earlier. It is thought that Nubian water wheels may have been ox-driven. So the traction was ox-driven. It is also known that Nubians used horse-drawn chariots imported from Egypt. So we got the idea of the chariot. So one of the things that we can actually say, we move on. Look at that, nice. A three-spoked antique trike. I know no idea how old this is, but it's pre-1870s, right? But when you think about this sort of idea of chariots and movement, two wheels would be enough, and obviously the box itself and obviously a yoke and so on. That would be your early chariots. And we do know that they would have been in existence in ancient Egypt over 3,500 years ago. So this idea of the spoked wheel, now this is something else. So what you're doing, you're taking the weight away from the wheel. So if you take the weight away from the wheel, you could probably move faster. So we know that the concept of the spoked wheel existed in ancient China as far back as 4,000 years ago. And obviously, eventually things changed. So obviously by the 1860s, 1870s, you had the idea of the wire spoked wheels, and the idea of the pneumatic tire would have been invented after that. So obviously we all know how things moved on, and we've got alloy wheels and all that wonderful technology. And you know, the concept of the wheel itself is hugely important in the idea of civilization. But it's not only important for traction, as we've already said. We're going to look at the spinning wheel for a little bit in a few moments. The wheel alone is not a machine, but when attached to an axle in conjunction with maybe bearings, it forms the wheel and axle. One of the earliest and most simplest machines. A driven wheel is an example of a wheel and axle. Wheels predate driven wheels by about 6,000 years. Themselves an evolution of using, here we go, Pete, round logs as rollers to move a heavy load. A practice going back to prehistory so far that it has not been dated. So rollers themselves, we got the concept of rollers being used with the ancient pyramids as well. So what I want us to do, I want us to depart from that now. And obviously having a circular wheel is quite important. You know, your wheel needs to be circular. So what I'm going to do now is that we're going to sort of think about the spinning wheel. So hopefully my images are going to come up. So I'm just going to we're just going to see if my spinning wheels are going to be there. Do you know what? I really wish that oh, let's just go for my I had a default. So, and actually the spinning the spinning wheel images on Wikipedia are actually quite good. So those are the ones we're going to use. Spinning wheel. Typical image of, there you go. There it is. That's Richard's Mrs. Pauline with a spinning wheel. So, oh, we love Pauline, Richard. A spinning wheel is a device spelling out for spinning thread or yarn from fibers. So, in other words, Pete is spinning the yarn. Now, the one thing about the spinning wheel is to sort of look at the history of the spinning wheel and to try and understand the history of the spinning wheel. How far does the technology of the spinning wheel go back? Does it go back hundreds of years? Does it go back thousands of years? That's what we're just going to talk about. And again, when we think about it, when we think about this sort of this contraption that we've got, and we've just got sort of the idea of the basic circular disc, and we're creating wool, a very early form of spinning wheel. When we think about a spinning wheel like this is technology very advanced. So the spinning wheel, a textile, cotton industrial, cotton textile, away from wool spinning itself, cotton textile spinning is what made the Industrial Revolution go as far as it did. You know, to create bags and all the rest of it. You know, mass production. The spinning wheel. There you go. It laid the foundations for later machinery, such as the spinning jenny. We've come across that, and the spinning frame, which displaced the spinning wheel during the Industrial Revolution. So this was the start, but the Industrial Revolution took it a lot further. Now, interestingly enough, this is amazing. I'm looking at this image. There's been color added to this image, but you know what? This image dates. This image is over 120 years old. It's amazing, isn't it? It looks like it could have been taken yesterday. So this is a 120-year-old image of an Irish woman with a spinning wheel. So the basic spinning of yarn involves taking a clump of fibers, which we've done with our basic simple wheel here, and teasing a bit of them out, then twisting it into a basic string shape. You continue pulling and twisting to make it longer and longer, and to control the thickness. Thousands of years ago, people began doing this onto a stick called a spindle wheel, which was a very lengthy process. As we got our spinning wheel here, our little spindle wheel. That's what we showed you earlier on. The actual wheel part of a spinning wheel doesn't take place of the spindle. Instead, it automates the spinning process, allowing you to twist the thread without having to constantly do so manually. So this is the pre-industrial revolution, the Industrial Revolution. And also the size of the wheel lets you finely control the amount of twist. The thread still ends up on the spindle, just as it did in wheel times. So when it ends up on a spindle wheel, right? But it's a much quicker process. The wheel itself was originally free moving, spun by a hand or foot reaching out and turning it directly. Eventually, simple mechanisms were created, the Industrial Revolution, that let you simply push at a pedal and keep the wheel turning at an even more constant rate. So an even more constant thread. This mechanism has been the main source of technological progress since the earlier part of the 1700s, at least 1750. So where does this technology
Operated by a treadle.
Treadle wheel.
Yeah.
So we're gonna hang on a minute. Now this is an image from 1852. A more technologically advanced spinning wheel. And if we sort of move in here, look at that there. Now that's a very interesting image. This is a spinning wheel as technology dating back to 1237. So nearly 800 years ago, an image of a spinning wheel from the great Arabian world. However, the Chinese don't want to be outplanted by the Islamic world. There we go. Now, this image itself, detail of the spinning wheel by a Chinese artist that created this image in 1270. 1270. So I'm looking at that. I'm thinking, yeah, 1270. So the history of the spinning wheel is disputed. Some writers believe that the spinning wheel may have developed, wait for it, as far back as the Indus Valley civilization, which takes us back 4,000 years, speculating that the uniformity of the thread and tight weave from a clay impression indicates the use of a spinning wheel rather than the drop spindles that are the more simpler technology. So what we're saying, there's an impression of a yarn within clay, and that's the evidence that they're using to say a spinning wheel, or they're saying spinning wheels, but a spinning wheel may have been invented over 4,000 years ago. What we do know is that it is proposed as well. If we got this image in the Chinese world, that the spinning wheel itself may have been invented as far ago in China as 3,000 years ago, in what we would call as the Hu dynasty in China. We've got, and this is another thing, we've got the word spinning wheel as a concept being written down in Chinese dictionaries 1,900 years ago, with some of the with the spinning wheel itself being extremely widespread in China at least 1,000 years ago. It was given. So obviously Chinese civilization and Chinese technology, and it said that the spinning wheel, this is the argument between the Indus Valley, which is on the border between Iran and India. We do feel that the wide range in use of the spinning wheel may actually come from China, from India, the Indian subcontinent, 1,500 years ago. Whatever source you think of, and whatever source you think, is that the Islamic world invented the wheel. So there is evidence pointing to the spinning wheel being known. Some people say invented, but known to the Islamic world, particularly in Baghdad, because this image comes from Baghdad in 1237. But the Islamic world evidence tells us that 1,000 years ago, this was being widespread. And obviously this illustration, Baghdad in 1237. So it's very, very vague to try and understand where the spinning wheel actually comes from. And that they're just, the Indians have the last sort of laugh on this one, or the last idea. And then we think about the concept of the spinning wheel. Did the concept of the spinning wheel come before the idea of transport needing wheels anyway?
No.
So there's that thing.
No.
So it said that well, you said a firm no there. That's fair enough. So what we've got a poet in India in the 1100s that clearly refers to the use of a spinning wheel, and not just the use of a spinning wheel, the clear parts used in the spinning wheel. So there we go. So what we can be thankful for is the spinning wheel moved through from the Islamic world into Europe, and not via the Indian world. So obviously it's coming through into Europe, and we've got European illustrations as early as 1280 with the spinning wheel in widespread use. But it's saying that the spinning wheel and the spindle wheel, the simple spindle wheel that we showed you at the beginning, were still used alongside each other, and it was people didn't really trust the spinning wheel. They didn't trust it because it was like this thing going around. Let's just use old technology. So the mechanizing of the process and the types of wheel, and they're talking about fuzzy wools and fuzzy wools from fuzzy wool sheep, just like the Shetland sheep, which we've got 6 Shetland sheep here. Spinning wheels ultimately did not develop the capability to spin a variety of yarns until the beginning of the 1800s and the late 1700s with the mechanization of spinning. So in general, the spinning technology was known for a long time, but it took a while to be adopted by people. And you know, Pete mentioned about the tread allowing the spinning wheel to evolve by foot action rather, so you could keep the hand free to sort of all. So you know, we got this was in the 1530s. So one last thing that we'll do today, and we'll then finish. Leonardo da Vinci drew a picture of the flyer, which twists the yarn before winding it onto the spindle. We've got Leonardo da Vinci again. During the 1500s, a treadle wheel with flyer was in common use. So we're going to actually show that now. Hang on a minute. Let's just go through these images. There she is. And so basically, it's got the ability for this to go around with the rotation, leaving the hands free. So this is this refers to as I think you got a hand treader there, but it was a foot treader being used. So using the foot rather than the hand, which was illustrated there, and meaning that both hands were free to spin the wool or the yarn, spin a yarn. But we do believe that this technology may have actually been available to the ancient Chinese or the Chinese before this technology was available in Europe. So there's all that being said. In 1771, just one last thing, Richard Arkwright used water wheels to power looms for the production of cotton cloth. His invention became known as the water frame. So you've obviously got more modern spinning wheels and more modern spinning technology. But that just gave you a little bit of an overview of us as the spinning wheel developed. And there's that young lady there from India, and you can just see where her legs are in operation there, and that actually looks like a bicycle wheel, but it does the job.
By turning the big wheel, she's turning a small spinning axle, if you like, which is actually spinning the wool. Yes. Not the big wheel itself. That's just the drive.
Yes, the drive for the shaft.
Yeah.
So this technology has evolved from very early technology, really. And I'll tell you what this is now. Hang on a minute. Let's just go back to. Let's explain these images a little bit more. Hang on a minute. Let's sort of go. Hang on a minute. Just sort of where are we there? Hang on. And what have we got there? Just going back to my images here. Just going with the descripts. Right, using a bicycle wheel and a yarn swift, it's called. Modified and portable, compacted. I've no idea how this is going to work, but you can probably get an idea. That's for a much smaller yarn. And a spinning wool on a great wheel at a demonstration in the History Museum loom house. And obviously that's being fed in there. And you've obviously got some movement to spin that wheel. So obviously this is all technology. Spinning wool on a great wheel. That's what that's called. And again, you've got the treadle there as that moves around, leaving the hands free. The treadle at the base there. And it gets more and more complicated into that. And different colours being used. And a more simple mechanism. Oh, there she is. There she is, and that's hand driven. But then again, when you've got the rotation, it's working really fine. So anyway, so what we're going to do next week, we'll obviously continue. We'll do one more looking at the wheel next week, and then we'll continue into another technology. So we'll move slightly away from the wheel next week, but we've got to look at the line, the step, the movement again, and the ladder, which we've already mentioned in the past. So what we're going to do, is there any questions on any of that today?
No.
Stephen?
Not really. I'm still struggling to understand how spinning wheels would have been developed, because they are from my ex-wife used to do a lot of spinning, and she had various different wheels and various different technologies, and the basic premise is you're quite right, is probably taken from the drop spindle.
Yes,
which is a very straightforward way of doing it.
There it is. It's just like it's just spinning that around, and it as you got that movement. This is quite an ingenious bit of technology. And this is Shetland wool. And I just think it's human need to sort of produce more.
Yeah.
It's just like rail transport. They thought, well, we'll develop rail transport so we can move heavier loads, and not necessarily faster. But that's another route to the way things develop.
But to do that to use a spinning wheel, the spinning wheels by their very nature have to be very light, so they have to have spokes and a hub.
Yes. So the idea of the spoke and the hubs must have come from the idea of transport then, rather than a solid wheel.
Yeah, I mean, whether it came from transport or whether it came as a via another route, but there had to be some form of, certainly with spinning, it was inconceivable that they would have started with very big, large, heavy wheels.
And the other thing as well is the idea of the spokes may have given the idea to use that as traction.
Correct.
So to lessen the load, well, if you think about it, if you look at that solid wheel earlier on, that big massive solid wheel, there's no way that could be used in spinning wheel technology. It's just too big.
Yeah.
There's no way. So there's no way you can use that, and it's just I think Pete's comment earlier on about he said need, and he said development for the idea of need and what people need. If they don't need something, then they're not going to use it.
But the whole point about the spinning wheel is that it's not load bearing.
No, it's light.
You wouldn't need to worry about the dynamics of having a large load and having a cart.
No.
Use a spinning wheel with a hub.
Yeah.
Spokes.
Yeah, with the spokes to make it light. So you don't have a solid piece of. Yeah, you don't. So in other words, what we can rule out is that meter diameter big circular wheel at Must Farm was definitely not a spinning wheel.
Yeah,
we know that wasn't a spinning wheel because it just wouldn't be practical.
But at the same time, it may have had a different. The development of the wheel may have come from different things at different times for different requirements.
Yeah, exactly. And it's quite surprising how the wheel is used today. And you can, if you sit down and work out where you've seen the wheel, it's everywhere. And actually, in your computers, you've got your hard drive that is based on a system of little wheels that spin around. Well, they're changing that technology now, but there's all these discs that spin around, right? That's where all your memory is. So if you drop that and there's a slight movement with the wheels within the old hard drives, then you've lost everything. And that's based on the technology of the wheel. Electromagnetism within that system, within the hard drive. So obviously the tops are bottles. It's the circle. We've gone back to that idea of the circle. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the light bulb, light shades, all these things. And actually, if you look at a light shade, it's spoked.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that light shade come before everything else. That would be ridiculous. But you never know. You never know. Right. Okay. Roger, anything you'd like? I presume that as Stephen's finished, but anyway, Roger, anything you'd like to say?
As I would say, it was just very interesting developments from, as you said, need. That's obviously the thing that drives things on, worthwhile. And sometimes perhaps the toys you find are copying the adults' machines, devices, and it might be a clue as to what was going on. I don't know. That was the point I wondered about. And as you said, with load bearing and spokes and all the rest of it, it lightens the wheel with still enough strength to take load if needed in any application.
And the other thing as well is, this was one thing that I sort of was getting at, that it's more likely that children are copying what the adults are doing rather than the adults copying what the children are doing. Because if you go back
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, if you go back to the toy, right? I didn't really. I this is what I meant, Roger. I didn't actually say it, which is, yes. I'm glad you spotted that one. If you go back to the notes, it basically says, these are for children, and these were developed for children, right? Well, I'm sorry, adults are really selfish. Adults look at adult needs, and then the need is to create some entertainment for children, right? Because at the end of the day, all this technology that is being created for children is not being created by children, it's being created for adults for children, right? So the people coming up with these ideas with these little toys were adults, not children. So does that actually mean that this is actually indicative of transport anyway, and it's just being done in a model scale for children? We can't do the other route that is, we're doing this for children and there's no application for adults. Can you imagine somebody saying, oh, you've made that for my child, and it moves along on a piece of string? Well, hang on a minute, right? If you've done that for our daughter, you can certainly do it to drag a sack of spuds down the yard on 4 wheels on a bogie, surely. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Thank you, Roger. You got me off on a tangent. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we ignore evidences that tell us that there is something going on, and we're just ignoring it.
Yeah.
Right. So, Bill, anything you want to say, darling?
Nothing on spinning wheels, but thinking about the evolution of the wheel again.
Yeah, go.
One aspect we never considered in that is terrain. And I'm inclined to believe that the development of the wheel, the evolution, may have occurred in countries which were flat or countries which had flat areas. During the days of the hunter-gatherers, obviously they would have gone from A to B and left tracks behind them, which would have been converted slowly into holloways and flat areas and roads, call it what you will.
I like it. Go on, keep going.
And it would be easier then for someone to roll, say, a log down a flat area, or even to kick a pebble along the road, which give us the idea, oh, that rolls along. So maybe we can do something with this now. Because in mountainous areas, obviously, they probably use sledges to move material from A to B, etc. So I think the roadway came before the wheel.
That's really sensible. And you know that well, you would really there's a group online. It's called Facebook. It's by a guy by the name Ross Brodstock, and he's obsessed with this thing that you know, we had most of the civilization here in Britain before the Romans get here. And one of his things, and this is one thing I've written in my own book, that that most of the routeways and trackways in Britain existed before Roman civilization.
Oh, most
right?
definitely.
Yeah.
But
this is the point. And so therefore, the track itself as an idea of movement. Oh God, you've got a whole topic there. Tracks. Which I know we've done a bit of, but we need to do a bit more of that, Ren. So you are dead right, Bill. Trackways were not developed for transport. They were developed for movement.
That's right.
And define what movement is. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And actually, the most easiest tracks in the world, right, have to be tracks that are being created by animals. So if you go up on a mountainside, right, you get trackways of sheep. Sheep follow these trackways. They go in a straight line.
Yeah. So the roads came first.
Roads came first, yeah. Ideal. Right, thanks for that, Bill. And who else have we got? Richard Babes?
Yeah, I just sort of look on, you know, I think most of these things sort of come in a logical sort of direction, you know, with this, it's like Bill said, someone standing on a pebble or something and found it rolled along. Same thing with a piece of wood, a twig or something. You think, hang on, I'll get 2 logs, plonk this on the top of it, I can drag it along.
I agree.
And then they go a bit further and I think, well, this is no bloody good, like, because we've got to keep picking the logs up. I think we'll call them wheels now. We've got to pick the wheels up, keep moving them around. What we need is the wheels staying with the platform that we built to move. And it's just gone on from there.
That just makes sense. That's talking about
you know,
Peter's
they possibly put a plank across and cut 2 slots in it, so the log stayed in there. They thought, hang on, this isn't very good on rough ground sort of thing. Then they just sort of build the wheel then to give it the ground clearance. Probably made the wheels a bit thin. Oh, these are no good. They keep getting stuck in the mud. We'll make the wheel a bit wider. Make the wheel bigger, that'll go over rougher terrain, and it's just it's just like we do now. You know, you don't see a bulldozer with tiny wheels, do you?
No.
Bulldozer's got big wheels, it's going through rough ground. If you've got a nice surface, you don't need such a big wheel. And I think it's just people, you know, it's like logic. Think, hang on, this is a waste of bloody time, you know, we keep losing the logs. We need the logs to stay with the actual what we're carrying.
Yeah,
I agree. Whether it's a lump of stone or.
I agree. I agree.
I think it's just evolved, you know, over time. It's, you know, and it's over thousands of years. So they've had plenty of time to perfect it.
That's the thing, got thousands of years to perfect it. And the other thing as well is this horses for courses, right? If logs work, it works, right? If it doesn't work, then you use something else. If that works, you don't go on to stage 2, right? You know, in some parts of the world, you don't use Land Rovers. You don't need Land Rovers. In other parts of the world, you do, right? You know, it's, for example, there are certain parts of the world that you don't need big buses because you don't have many people needing buses. You know, you don't find a bus on the island of Flatholme because you don't need a bus on Flatholme. A four-wheel drive would be good, but that's all you need. So it's out again. Pete used that word "need," and Pete has the last say. Go on, Pete.
Well, you were talking about the spinning wheel. The spinning wheel simply is the means of driving a spindle. The spindle has to be fed with carded material, carded wool or whatever. And it's a very skilled operation to card and supply the wool to the spinning bobbin to keep a constant supply of the right thickness, the right strength of the yarn that's being produced. And it is a very, very complicated thing and needs a high degree of skill to actually transfer the spinning of the wheel onto the bobbin to then control the feed of the carded wool onto the bobbin.
And the thing is, you see, that's one thing that we missed throughout the entire lecture, Pete. Right? And I need to say this: the skill that all of this takes, and the intelligence that all of this takes. It's not just about need, guys. It's about the idea of the creativity of humanity, and that's needed to be said.
Yeah,
that really needed to be said. So I don't think it was this class last week. Somebody said, and I thought, oh God, I didn't actually mean that. Was it you guys? I think somebody gave the impression that I may have said, well, you know, we weren't that intelligent, and you know, and all the rest of it. And I said, no, that's not what I meant. The people in the past, in many ways, in many shapes and forms, were far more highly intelligent than we are today. We've got computers and all the rest of it. And the lecture that I did on Tuesday was so in depth, right? That my guys on Tuesday night, Pete remembers, we had so many facts, right, about prehistory. And with all those facts about prehistory, I think what's coming across is that prehistory is so complicated because the people who created prehistory in the first place were so complicated themselves, and their minds were so complicated and so beyond our imagination. And that needs also to be said.
Okay.
So on that note, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week. Do you know what I might do next week? No, what I'm going to do next week, I'm actually gonna. We could do a lot more with wheels next week and all the rest of it. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave wheels for now. I think this is a sensible thing, and I'm gonna get obsessed with the line moving into the form of steps. We're gonna do steps next week. Now, steps is a even queerer concept than the wheel, right? So we're gonna do steps next week as continuing that line, steps. And then we're going to do the ladder, and if we need to, we'll come back to the wheel, which we'll need to do anyway. And actually, that'll mean that we've got next week, the week after. Yeah, we've only got 2 left. So, and then we'll move on to another group of sessions. So we'll so that'll lead us. So we got next week and the following week, and then we'll start again. So that's it.
Okay.
So, Pete, Steve, is there anything else you want to say?
Nothing else from me, thanks.
Okay, Roger, Bill, Richard, anything else you want to say?
No.
Thanks, Carl.
Good evening. Good night.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Good night,
So,
Bill.
Good night, all.
Roger.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care, everybody.
Thanks,
Steve.
Ed.
And thank
See
you very
then.
much, guys. It's been a
See you
pleasure.
then.
Take
Good
care.
night.
Night.
Yeah,
Cheers, everyone.
Night,
that was
guys.
a good one, Carl. Yeah, thank you.
I'm glad it was, Pete. I really am. I really am. Richard didn't seem to think so, but Richard's a numpty.
That's right.
I think he's your guiding light.
Guiding light. But there is one thing. Oh, he's gone. I was just going to ask him something, a numpty. Oh, forget it. Right. Okay. Jessica, sorry to run over again. Have you heard from Pat?
No, I don't have contact with her. Anne, do you have contact with her?
No, well, I could, but
Oh no, didn't she mention that she was away this week?
Yeah.
I think she
I'm pretty, yeah, I'm pretty sure she said she couldn't make it this week.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
right.
that's fine.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, then what I'm going to do, Jess, I'm going to let
What?
get. So there's no Pat today, so I don't need to give her a ring.
No.
Well, you can if you want, but no. They're not. I was just thinking, Jess, when are you away from our class?
Next week.
Oh, guess what?
Go on.
I can't make it next week. I've got a very important person to meet.
Right, okay.
So
Well, what
the
you
only
do in
thing
your
is,
private time's nothing to do with us.
we could well get somebody else to bring a computer in, or maybe people could, do it from home.
Yeah, it's just Dorothy can't. So even if maybe we
No.
just sent her, Carl, if I sent a detailed note.
Yeah, there's one week she can't make it herself.
Oh, hello, Pat. Am I right in thinking you're not joining us tonight?
Right, I told her that I had my daughter from America here.
Oh, the lippy one. All right, then I'll leave you to it.
Okay, I do back next Wednesday.
All right then, darling. All right then, I'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Take care. Oh, and you're not coming tomorrow, obviously. Okay then, bye. Bye.
We'll have a chat about it tomorrow then. And
Okay. Okay. So what I need to know is what the topic is now, Jess, please.
Bracken beacons.
oh,
Right. Okay. Cool. Nice. Right. So what I'm going to do. Anyway, people watching online, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll set up a new thingamajig now. So thank you very much for the wheel again, part 2. So anyway, I'm going to be off now, Jess. I'll leave it over to you. Do a bit of banter a minute, and then I'll get this online. Okay. Take care, Richard and Jess.
Take care.
Okay.
Oh, Carl.
Yeah.
Have you given me power before you go?
Oh, right. Yeah. Let's. Yeah, you're into the old power. All right. Okay. What I need to do, I need to set up. Oh, hang on. Make co-host. Right. So we got that. Yes. So if you, I'll be piddling around in the background. I'll set up the doodah. So anyway, take care. Anyway, thanks for watching on Zoom and YouTube. Anyway, I'm going to say goodbye, Richard and Jess. See you next week.
Next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.